You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast.
What's happening, folks? Happy Wednesday. How's everybody doing out there? We'll go ahead and welcome everybody that is showing up. Definitely all our folks that normally are here. We're going to go through the list in just a second. Welcome to the Dangerous Liberty Podcast, where we know the only thing more important or the only thing more dangerous than liberty is the lack thereof. It feels kind of weird. I don't have headphones on tonight. We don't have a bunch of folks on here. Feels different. Jeff Hahn, welcome. Mike Ken, welcome. Charles O'Neill, welcome. Who else we got on here? Alaska Andy, Willie Everett. Folks, we got a couple of people out tonight. Summer is actually in the hospital having a baby. Chris and his wife are busy working right now. Actually, flip that. No, we want to keep Chris and Robin in our prayers tonight. They're actually at the hospital. They're expecting a child. Chris is on here right now. Chris, we miss you, buddy. It's just not the same without you. Definitely want to welcome everybody that, again, normally comes, but for those of you just tuning in for the first time or maybe even in the future, we want to make sure that you know that you are welcome here, and we would like you to show up here on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Again, we do this live so that you can have some input, that you can participate, we can take your questions, we can argue together as friends, all that good stuff. We got an interesting and fun little show tonight. I want to go through some of the different things that have come up regarding this kind of series, and we got a lot more videos coming for this as well. Folks, I do want to remind you, we do have the Fat Boy tripod and the Levitate head giveaway, so make sure that you go check that video out. I'm not doing anything until we get 10,000 views. I think we're around 2,500, so a quarter away there. You can go watch that thing every single day. Make sure you share that. All you need to do to enter is like, subscribe, throw a comment on that video. You can do the same thing on Rumble if you're watching this on YouTube, and you can get additional entries. And for those of you, anytime that you post that video on Facebook or Twitter or any other place that you can post that video and you actually tag us in it, we'll give you an additional entry. So again, going back to this video that I originally posted, this MOA sucks video. So for those of you tuning in, number one, these thumbnails are meant to be a little provocative, and I have found it pretty funny at how pissed off people have gotten regarding this subject. It's almost hilarious,
When you tell the truth.
It does suck when you tell them the truth. But besides that, I'm going to talk about if you're using MOA, where it makes sense and where it doesn't, right? And then we'll talk about the benefits of MIL in general. And again, for those of you that have questions or anything like that or comments, throw those up there. And I thought this would be a great subject to talk about live, because as I'm going through these comments, I'm kind of hitting multiple different comments coming at me from different angles, and I'm trying to address those, and it's very difficult. And I think on a forum like this, it'll definitely be a lot easier to kind of make sure that we're hitting those in a more concise manner. But again, the other thing I have people say one thing, I address that, and then they say another thing, and I have that happening in multiple different comments. And I'm trying to address all those for those of you that can actually talk about this in a respectful manner. So let's go back to the original intent of this video, or the part one of this video. The original intent behind that was not to change the minds or even make a case for people that are already using MOA to switch to MIL. That wasn't the intent, regardless of said thumbnail. I made that video because there's a lot of people out there, and there's lots of videos out there, MIL versus MOA, where we explain the differences. And I've made those, and many other people. And those videos obviously are for people that are new to shooting or thinking about switching, or they're trying to figure out what the difference is, and if there is an advantage of one over the other. And I think that for most people that have used both MIL and MOA extensively, and you have experience on both, I think that advantage for mil is kind of self-evident. I mean, it becomes very obvious when we're using that, and we'll talk about that. But again, that video was not to make a case that it was better. What I was trying to do, or make the argument against people that are already using MOA, for instance. There was three things that I was trying to address with that video. Number one are people that are hesitant to use mil think these main three things. Number one, that you have to learn the metric system, and I talked about it in the video. You don't need to know the metric system. I will say there is an advantage if you do understand the metric system, which is pretty easy to do. You can pretty much sub out meters for yards for the most part. There's about a 10% difference, but that gets into the weeds, and now we're talking about well over 1,000 yards. But if you're using your rangefinder in meters, it becomes pretty easy. So you don't need to necessarily know the metric system, but if you do learn it, there are some advantages there. Number two, the thing that I hear people say is that mil is a lot harder than MOA. It is definitely not harder. And number three, the other thing that I often hear people say is, well, you have to do a lot more math. No, you don't. The only time that you're doing math is obviously if you're converting MOA to mils or vice versa. Now, for those of you that are unfortunate enough to have an optic where your reticle is in mil and then your turrets are in MOA, now you're doing math. Ooh. So you need to get rid of that thing. Make sure whatever system you decide that you're going with, your optic is speaking the same language, both with the reticle and the turrets. And there's Ray. So if you guys need any other recommendations from anybody, there's Ray with X-Ring talking about mil. I am going to address some of the things that I keep hearing that MOA is more precise, and we're going to put that into context. Yes, the measurements are smaller, but it's irrelevant when it comes to 99% of the population shooting. Mm-hmm. Your gun is not more precise because the adjustments on that are smaller. And we'll talk about that and make sure that we are, again, putting that in context and make sure that people understand that, because that is the biggest problem. Is there's a lot of folks out there using MOA and they think it's better for it based on just misconception and a fundamental misunderstanding of the basics of long range. And we'll talk about your shot group and how that goes into that, and I'll address any questions or comments we have on that. One of the comments that I heard a lot on the MOA sucks video is when I was showing hold-offs, I intentionally kept that to where I was showing essentially that it was easy to do both. Because again, I'm making this argument to a new shooter that is going into it thinking that it's going to be more difficult to do hold-offs using mil. I can easily make the argument that it's easier using hold-offs with mil, and I plan to do that in future videos with actually filming through an optic and showing you how confusing mil versus MOA is, and we'll get into some of that. So that's kind of laying out the original video and the intent behind that video. Yes, those examples that I showed you were not intended to show a great improvement of mil versus MOA. It was intended to show new shooters that it's not more complicated. It is easier, and we'll talk about that too, but it is what it is. So again, if you guys have questions, comments, or arguments on some of these things, we'll talk about that. The first thing that I addressed to some extent in mil versus MOA, or MOA sucks part 2, is that before we get into this, you have to understand that your gun is not more precise because of the adjustments that you're using on a scope, folks. You just need to understand that. And I want to talk about a few of those things and get into this just a little bit. So, Jay, if you'll throw this up on the other camera there. I want to establish a good understanding of this concept before we move any further. So, when you guys are determining your shot group, right? When you're saying my gun shoots one MOA at 100 yards or anything like that. So we're shooting a group, and let's say we've zoomed in here, and this is a 1-inch shot group, right? This is 1 inches. And we're doing all the things that we need to do. And we get a 5-round shot group. And we have, an impact over here. We got an impact over here, an impact here, an impact here, and an impact here. This is 1 inch. This is the best that your system can shoot. And when I'm talking about a firing system, folks, we're talking about your rifle, your optic, you, the shooter, and the ammunition. Your gun is only as accurate or precise as the lowest level of precision in that system. So if you have a gun that can shoot quarter MOA, but your ammunition is 1.5 MOA, the best you're ever going to do is 1.5 MOA. So hopefully we can agree on that right there. So this is a 5-round shot group. The other thing I want to establish is that when we are shooting groups, hopefully we can agree on the fact that that is kind of a snapshot of us getting down behind the gun, putting a lot of concentration and effort into that, and then we shoot 5 groups, and now we're kind of in a different mode of shooting altogether, because there's a reason we don't shoot 15-round groups or 20-round groups, because if we start to get into 15 or beyond even 5, we would start seeing flyers out here. And that's just a fact because of variance, because of our concentration, because of variance between ammunition, all those things. So this is a 5-round group. This is 1 inch at 100 yards, 1 MOA essentially, right? 1.047 for those of you that start kind of dinging me in our YouTube snipers on that. Because folks, honestly, one of the problems that we're running into is that we have a lot of people that have learned long range shooting from people on YouTube that have learned long range shooting from people on YouTube. Like, there's some technical information that you need to go with, either going to a long range school like ours or diving into some books like Applied Ballistics or some of those others. There's some technical information that you need to establish, because some of you understand just enough to make an argument, but you don't understand really what you're saying. And that's part of the issue with that.
We had a question from Jason Sponsor.
Yep, hit it.
Do we go into mil versus MOA long range?
Absolutely. We explain both, and then either myself or whoever instructor happens to be teaching that PowerPoint, we explain very briefly. We don't spend a lot of time on that, but we explain very briefly of the benefits of mil.
And X-ray here too.
Yep, we'll hit raise. He says, sure, this has been covered by Gary. At 1,000 yards, 1/10 of a mil moves the bullet 3.6 inches. At 1,000 yards, 2.5 inches. None of us can hold a 1 inch difference at 1,000 yards. That's absolutely true. And that's one of the things I want to get into, folks, is the problem with this concept is just because, number one, you can shoot a 1 inch group at a 1 MOA group at 100 yards does not mean that you are going to shoot a 1 MOA group at 500 yards. Do it. You're going to see that as we start to go out the distance, there again, because of variance, forget about even external factors, forget about the environment, right? Most people are not going to hold a 1 MOA group all the way out to 1,000. Again, we get into variance between the ballistic coefficients of the bullets. All those minor things start to show up a lot more at distance. Typically, I would say a really good shooter with a really good gun is probably shooting around 1.5 MOA on average at 500. And I would say probably by 1,000, we're probably shooting closer to 2 MOA. That's just a fact. Now, there are some of you who say, well, F-class shooters use, you can go back to the other screen, Jay. You could say that, F-class shooters use MOA. Well, they do. You're absolutely right. But they also do a lot of other things. They spend copious amounts of time on reloading. They have a front rest that costs several $100s that is micro adjusted. They throw away their barrels if they're shooting over 0.5 MOA. So, when I hear that argument, it's like saying, well, Gary, I have I'm going to take my Ford truck and I'm going to put F1 tires on it. And now it's going to handle in corner and be able to move as fast as a Formula One car. Just because you're taking one component of what they do, if you're not applying all the other things that they do, then really, what's the point? And just because you have a component on your rifle that says it can do one thing doesn't mean that it actually can. Again, one of the examples I constantly use is just because my Honda Civic, my stock Honda Civic says it has 250 miles an hour on the speedometer, doesn't mean I can actually go that fast. So let's say on best case scenario, we have a 1 MOA shot group all the way out to 1,000. And that's not the case, but let's say for the sake of argument that it is. So now we have this target, right? You draw this square target. All right, so this is our square. We have a square gong out there. We'll say this is at 500 yards. And I don't know, let's say this target is approximately 1 MOA as well. So we have a 5-inch target, and let's say that we're actually shooting that 5-inch shot group, that 1 MOA shot group at 500. So this is the best that your shot group can get, folks. We cannot, so if you have an impact here, just like going back to our original shot group, we understand that the gun is going to basically randomly impact around within that circle. We have no control of making those shots tighter because we're at the limits of what the gun can do. Not necessarily what you can do, but the entire system between the gun, the ammunition, the optic, all those things. So the idea that because we get an impact here, all right, this is within 1 MOA. We get an impact here and we're like, all right, we're going to move this impact a quarter of an MOA over here. We're trying to get this, or a half MOA over here. We're at the edge of this. So let's say we're trying to go for center. Yeah, we can move our point of aim, which is essentially what we're doing mechanically with that optic. But folks, the next round, let's say we move it over 2. We've now moved that impact zone, all right, that cone of fire over to some. And now we can have an impact up here. We could have an impact down here. We can have an impact over here. Like, we can't control at that level. So, because that is the limit of precision that your rifle can do. So the idea that this is the thing that you have to understand. You cannot move individual impacts with any sort of reliability with greater fidelity than your group size at any distance. So that's what you need to realize. Now, kind of what Ray is getting into, sure, we can move this cone of fire over some left or right if that is the case. If, let's say we get several impacts, and let's say this is where we start over here, folks. And we can see that generally we get around there, we get around there, we get around up here, we get around up here. Yeah, we can move this over some to generally center this up. But again, you're not going to get a greater fidelity. And that's not really what we do. We don't look at it like that anyhow. We see this one impact, and we want to move it over a finer amount than our gun is able to precisely engage with. So we can move our cone of fire over, but we can't move individual impacts reliably with inside that cone of fire. Hopefully that makes sense.
So what you're saying is move the group, not the round.
You're moving the group, not the round. So the idea that, at 1,000 yards, folks, that you can reliably, because on your scope, it says quarter MOA, that you can reliably move that impact 0.25 MOA. And you're also saying that that's better than 0.36 MOA. It's crazy, because 0.36 is essentially what we're talking about with mils. So we need to understand that. And then there's a whole lot of other things that we'll get into tonight a little bit to address a lot of some of the other comments. And I think this is a really important discussion because, this fundamental fact needs to be understood. And if you don't understand this, then you're choosing equipment and tactics and doing things in a manner that it's just based on bad information. So just like with your applied ballistics calculator or any ballistic calculator, folks, bad information in, bad information out. So to say for 99% of the population that MOA is more precise, you're wrong. Now, again, if you're an F-class shooter or you're a bench press shooter, folks, and those guys are doing everything they can and they're holding, quarter MOA groups out to much further distances. But they also have specialized guns. They have specialized equipment. And by the way, I've said this a bunch, F-class shooters and bench rest shooters are the most specialized, smallest minority of the shooting community, period. And if you're comparing yourself to a bench rest shooter, I hope you also have like a 60-pound gun and you're applying those same things, because that's what they do. So there's that issue. Let's hit some of these questions. The world record is 1.04 inches at 1,000. That's exactly right. What else we got? Any other questions? Because I'm going to hit reticles and turrets here in just a second. The other thing that we need to talk about, if you guys don't have any comments on that, and we have a good understanding of that. And again, folks, I got some more videos coming that I will illustrate better with an actual, filming through scope and some other models. This is definitely one of those topics I kind of stumbled onto. Really wasn't thinking it was going to be that big of a conversation starter, because I thought that we all understood this concept. And the more that I saw the comments, the more that I try to converse with folks talking about those things, the more I realize that there's a lack of foundational knowledge when it comes to long range shooting.
Well, I think, most people, what they learn on in the beginning is kind of what they're comfortable with,
Sure.
Most people don't want to switch once they learn something. Well,
and I talked about this in the part 1 of this series, is that the problem with MOA is that even us as instructors, we give you the example. Hey, one MOA is 1 inch to 100,000, 1,000, and so forth. And once you get that in your head, so a quarter MOA is a finer unit of measure than a 1/10 of a mil. So I'm in the business of being precise. So that is more precise and it makes more sense. Your gun, 99% of you out there, your gun is less precise than quarter MOA, and it's still less precise than 1/10 of a mil. So let's talk about a little bit about turrets, for instance. One of the things I talked about was that you can dial more efficiently. Folks, at the end of the day, mil is more efficient and easier. And this, again, coming from a guy that teaches both, that has used both, everything is easier, simpler, and faster. Now, some of you out there, if you're already invested in MOA, I am not making the case that you should switch out all your gear. You should throw it away. And I'm definitely not making the case that it doesn't work. It does work. It works great. I'm making the case that if you're a new shooter, it would be really smart to invest into mil. And I can tell you, 20 years ago, everybody was shooting MOA. Now, 90+% of shooters out there, especially new shooters, are shooting mil. And then I hear a lot of the comments, well, it's because of PRS. Well, I can tell you PRS simulates kind of more practical shooting than just about any other sport. If you're a target pistol shooter, you're using a lot of specialized equipment. You got headgear on, you got special sights, all those things. You're shooting with one hand. That is not a good analog for the everyday person that's shooting. And I'm talking whether it's hunting, whether it's all these things. If MOA works for you, then please continue to use MOA. I think it's almost hilarious how divisive this topic actually is. It's kind of funny. And by the way, I got some cool patches that are coming out. I'll show you guys those. For those of you on the mil side of the argument, you're going to enjoy those. For those of you on MOA or not, but I am going to make some MOA patches for the MOA mafia out there. Yeah, it is. John Esmond says, when did the shift from MOA to mil start? I would say it probably started about 10 to 15 years ago. And a lot of it has to do with, people being exposed to both. And some of it does have to do with the military. There's definitely a lot of snipers, guys with backgrounds like mine that came from that background and then came out and started shooting or opened shooting schools. You had a lot of instructors that were teaching both law enforcement and military. So they started using that. But I'll tell you, folks, if you spent time on both and you were put into practical shooting applications or situations, the fact that mil is easier easier to see, easier to hold off. All those things become very, very self-evident. There's no doubt about that. Nightlife Entertainment says maybe an instructional video for sale regarding mill reticles. Is that possible? Are you saying for an instructional video on reticles that are available? Clarify that question up there. I forgot who sent that. Ray says one of the biggest advantages for me is that when you're getting into holding within your reticle for speed, MOA is too coarse or too fine for fine holds. I agree with that, and that's one of the things Ray, that I kind of outlined very briefly in part 1, more so in part 2. Folks, when if you have a choice between 8 versus 28. For my gun, I know 1,000 yards is 8 mils. All I needed to do if I'm holding is drive over to 8 mils. I can find that. When you start looking for, and in the same area, folks, that's the problem. So when you have a reticle, we have 2 reticles. They're both the exact same distance, right? So between 1 and 10, there's approximately 36. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, that's 10. That's mil. Now for MOA, we have to put 36 in here.
Jeez.
To get to the same hold. All right, and then once you start going into the differences here, when we start, holding 4.5 mils or 4.6 mils, whatever it happens to be, and again times 3.5. Do some math for me, Jason. Do something productive back there. So
carry the 2.
4.5 times 3.5 equals what, Jay?
Oh, you really want me to do
Oh
this?
yeah, I really want you to do that.
All right, hold on.
4.5 times 3.5. We're somewhere around 15. All right. So when I have to find 15 versus 4.5, folks, 15.75. So that'd be 15.75 versus 4.5, which would be, down here somewhere. All right. Now we have to find 15.75. I'm telling you, folks, if I had a reticle up there, and this is one of the exercises I'm going to have you do, is I'm going to present 2 reticles, and I want you to time yourself. Hey, I want you to find, and I'll give you some sort of elevation hold. Find that, and then find the windage, and see out of those 2 which one takes you longer. Yeah, sure. With some training, there's no doubt. Switch my view, Jay. With some training, there is absolutely no doubt that you can minimize that difference. But if you put the same training into mill, I'm telling you, you're going to find those holds much faster. Now let's talk about dialing. I know on the night, and obviously scopes are different, but the Night Force Attacker 5-25, for instance, I know it has 12 mils or 12 MOA, both on the reticle. So, or both on the turrets, on the elevation turrets. So if I have to dial 28 to 1,000 yards on MOA and mill, all I need to dial is to 8, and I'm there. I'm done. With the same optic, now I got to dial to 28. I got to dial 2 full revolutions and then plus another 4. That is what it is. No, I'm sorry. How to use mill in general. Yeah. So Nightlife Entertainment, again, if you go to the part 1 of MOA Sucks on our video, I do that. The other thing, folks, is, again, I need you guys to keep in mind too, I know there's a video out there for almost everything when it comes to YouTube, right? At the end of the day, folks, go get some training, right? I would love for you to come with us. I know Ray over at X-Ring, he teaches some schools in long range as well. If you are serious about learning long range, I highly suggest that you come to one of these courses. If you come to one of our courses, what I can tell you for sure is that the $750 you're going to pay for a 2-day course, you will get back in lost ammunition, lost time searching through YouTube, and finding the wrong answers. The amount of time and money that it will save you in progressing you that much faster in your long range training and understanding long range, and be able to do it well and have fun doing it as opposed to constant misery. The technical information, along with all the fundamentals that we teach you, it can't be overstated how important that is. Bravo 4 talks about the finer MOA reticle is harder to see, and your holds are further every time you click that, Jay, I can't see it, as compared to shooting with a mil reticle. Absolutely, folks, it's so much easier to find these larger graduations, which are more than precise enough for 90. If you're not shooting F class, you're not shooting bench rest, mil is more than precise enough for everything that you will ever need. It's just the fact of the matter. Whereas you start looking at a MOA reticle, folks, it's hard to see. They're cramming a lot of information in the same amount, almost 3.5 times the information, by the way, 3.5 times the information in the same area, or at least the 3.5 times the subtensions in the same area. And folks, that gets confusing. And we see it every single time. Folks, when we have courses and we have students out there, the ones that have the hardest trouble, that are constantly misdialing and they're constantly grabbing the wrong holds, are the MOA guys. And that's another thing too. Before you even go buy anything, folks, come to one of our courses. We teach you, or any course. I'm just saying, go get some formal training. YouTube is not the end all be all. This is a hard skill. And I mean, an actual skill, right? Yeah, there's a lot of information in there, but learning those skills in person is going to do you so, it's going to get you so much further faster. But come to one of these courses. We tell you what gear we recommend, what guns we recommend, and not just like, hey, you need to buy this exact gun. I don't care if you buy from us or not. I want to give you the information that you can be an educated buyer. And when you leave one of those courses, you'll see the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages of both systems, and you can make up your own mind. But I think the idea that we constantly keep making these videos of mil versus MOA and just stating, oh, they're pretty much the same, so we can be diplomatic. I've done that in the past. It's wrong. It's nowhere close. We're selling you guys short, and we're not being honest with you, because obviously this is a very divisive subject, and people get very emotional about it. And I get it. You know, they're invested. They got a lot of money invested. And I'm not saying if you're already invested to switch. Although if I was, I would. I'll throw that out there.
Bravo 4 makes a good point.
Yeah. What do you say?
Significantly amplified when practicing shooting moving targets.
Yeah, so, you know, that's another point, folks. The way that many people shoot out there, if you just go to the range and you're taking, the idea here is that mil is faster, easier, and more efficient. If the way that you shoot, you never require yourself to be fast, you never put yourself in a shooting scenario where you need to be efficient, then it doesn't matter. If all you're going to do is take as much time as you ever want to look at the target, to laze it, to check it out, to see if your dope's good, all those things. And yeah, let's see, best entry level mil scope. Well, let's show. Absolutely, Arkin EP5. We did a review on it. I think I know many others have. I don't know if Ray, I don't know if you did a review on the EP5, but man, it is a lot of scope for the money. I am getting ready to do a 1-year review. It's that particular scope is on my son's gun. The more you use it, and again, I'm constantly getting on Night Force, and now we got a zero compromise back there, and going back and forth constantly in certain situations, I see a more significant difference. And you know, here's the spoiler alert. After I do that, when you get into high mirage, there's a difference. The money that you spent on the Night Force kind of shows up. Low light, you start to see the difference. So those are the two things where, you know, that extra money that you're putting in that scope starts to play. But I'll tell you, for 99% of what most people are doing, the EP5 is a great starter optic. It's a great scope. It's probably more capable than most people could shoot. So it's a really good. I mean, it's best, in my opinion, it's the best value out there.
You find people spend more money on the gun and less money on the scope, or vice versa?
Oh no, if you're doing it right, you're spending more money on the optic typically, but and that has changed a little bit. Again,
generally happening, that was kind of a question.
I'll say generally now, you know, things have changed in the last few years. You know, people used to go out and spend a bunch of money on guns, and then, you know, they'd buy a budget optic. And, you know, going back 5-10 years ago, that was a terrible choice. Mm-hmm. Today, you can get surprisingly, I mean, honestly, I would say probably that EP5, that Arkin EP5 is as good as like a top tier $3,000 scope was, 10 years ago.
Mhm.
So there's that. The other part of this, and Eric Cortina brought this up the week before last when he was on, is I don't know if he brought this up during the podcast or it was kind of a conversation we were having prior to, but regardless, and this is something I've talked about before too, when you buy a good optic or you buy good guns, or you just buy good gear, folks, you're basically renting those if you want to get rid of them. I can take one of the Night Force that I spend a bunch of money on, I can sell it, and I can sell it for $500 less than what I paid for it. And, I've used that optic for 5 years now, or however long I end up using it for. And then you sell it and, you get your money back out of it. So you've had an optic for 3 or 4 years. Yeah, you initially put out, $3,000 or whatever it was, but you're getting most of that money back. Whereas you start buying these budget optics, you're just not going to they're not going to hold their value the way that the more expensive, and the shooting experience is slightly better. And folks, I will tell you this right now, this is one of the things that keeps coming up. Well, I don't see a huge significant difference. Folks, nothing that we do is a huge significant difference, right? Like I can tell you right now, if I said, hey, if we could definitively say, folks, this optic right here is 5% better and will increase your performance by 5%, and it's $4,000. $4,000 for 5% guaranteed increase in performance. Your performance, all right? You'd miss 5% less. Folks, you wouldn't be able to keep those optics in stock. So what I'm telling you with this, no, it's not huge. It's not like an insurmountable difference, but it is very significant. And I would say probably on average, you're looking at about 10 to 15% overall increase in speed and efficiency and accuracy. I really do. I mean, it's so much easier to definitively hold a certain number or a certain stadia line on that mill compared to the MOA that I'm telling you, there's a lot of misses that I see and a lot of frustration that I see when people are using MOA scopes. But there again, if you don't shoot in a way that it requires that, then either one is just as good, because you can take as much time as you want. But if you're out there hunting and you have you're shooting an animal on the move, or you have to, it goes broadside for a moment where some speed and efficiency could really make the difference. Yeah, I would say mill all day long. Bravo 4 Solutions says Arkin on my burger. So who that is, right?
Yeah,
that's Brooke.
Yeah.
Brooke, I almost asked you to come on tonight. I didn't know if it was short distance, short time. So Jason Sponsor says, nice. I want to order one, but I just bought the last Sig Sauer from Gary, so I'll have to wait. And hell yeah, it's going to be a blast. What other comments do we have on mill versus MOA? Or any other long-range discussions as this? What's that? Can't handle guns on live stream. Summer was asking if you wanted to see her gun. She has it over there getting ready to ship out. Well, I know.
It's a chassis.
What's that?
It's a chassis.
And folks, I haven't even gotten into, I need to start, and again, we'll go through some of these videos, but there's about 50 other advantages of mill has over MOA that we haven't even talked about, whether you're talking about the Creedmoor hack. I don't know if Ray's still on here, but Ray just talked about, you can go watch his channel, X-Ring. He talked about speed drop, which has been a thing that you can do. Those types of, speed drop and Creedmoor hack are essentially the same. And just a quick synopsis, if you go into your Kestrel, you can select your gun, you put in the data there, and you can select speed drop. And what you do is you dial down. So for instance, if it's, we'll just kind of go with the Creedmoor hack, so it's easy math. But let's say you're shooting a 243 or whatever happens to be. You can pick speed drop, and it'll tell you where you dial your optic down. So you dial your optic down, let's just say -2. And with your data, now you can hold the range divided by 100 that you're holding. So for instance, if it's for 450 yards, all you're doing is holding 4.5. If you're shooting at 525, you're holding at 5.2 or 5.3. You can split the difference however you want to do that. But that option is not available to you on MOA. Same thing with the Creedmoor hack, which is, again, very similar to that as well. But you can do that with multiple calibers, and it's good from like a certain range out to a certain range, and then it kind of falls apart. But for what most people are shooting, it's a lot faster and a lot easier. So there's a lot of advantages there. And you know, again, folks, PRS is a good example of this. We have a lot of high-level competitors in PRS, and if MOA was better or more precise, they're not using it. Whereas 98% of them are using mil, not MOA. So, I mean, I think that's a good takeaway there. You need to kind of take a look at it. And you know, Eric Cortina even said when he's shooting F class, he's shooting MOA, but when he's shooting PRS, you know, he's going to use what everybody else is using, so he shoots mil. So that's another good point. I like when you talk the technical reason it's better, like less mess in the optic to worry about and speed of being on target. But because everyone has one thing, feels less convincing. Sure, and it's hard to do. It's hard to, you know, the problem is it's very hard to quantify. I mean, all I do is kind of show what technically I can show you. Yeah, Ray brings up the good point. You know, not all optics allow to dial below a zero stop. And that's another option. For instance, on most of my night forces, I don't even set my zero stop. As long as my gun will not go below zero a full revolution, I don't set it. I always know that the first zero, all right, the first zero that I come to, I can never dial a full revolution down. But for the guns that I don't want to do that, I always allow it to I always want some negative elevation in there. And he shows how to do that on his last video, or maybe the video before. Ray pumps out videos like nobody's business. So I don't know which video that was, but it was a great video. But yeah, you want to leave yourself some negative elevation when you're setting your zero stop. John Esmond says, do you like the Christmas tree? I love Christmas tree reticle. There's lots of good reasons behind that. We could talk about, and I would say that's the case whether we're using mil or MOA. All the information is there.
Right there.
What's that?
Speed alone with those Christmas tree.
100%. So, you know, being able to hold everything. One of the things that most people don't understand, even when I did the review on the Arkin EP5. If you guys go watch that, I have it over on Rumble right now. I think I brought it back over to, I had to edit some things because I got hit on that by YouTube. But the tracking on the EP5 was not perfect, the mechanical tracking, whereas the Night Force was. So typically when you're buying those higher end scopes, you're paying for all the nice additional nice clockworks that they put in that, so that is much more precise. It's like the difference between buying, you know, a $10 mechanical watch and, you know, a Swiss made Rolex or whatever it happens to be, is much more precise. With that being said, reticles are CNC machined on there. So as long as you're using the first focal plane reticle, that reticle is, even the cheapest of them out there, is going to be correct. And I see that time and time again when I'm testing optics. You can see that the reticles align on the tracking test, but not always mechanically. So the point is, if you learn to hold, as long as you don't get too far out by the edges, because there is some chromatic aberration, there's some things going on at the edges of an optic, and again, that depends on how good the optic's made as well. So you definitely have some distortion going on at the edges that could throw your hold off. But for the most part, if you're staying generally center of that and you have a good optic, the holds are going to be more accurate than the mechanical adjustments. So, and it's definitely faster. You know, imagine at every target, let's say you got 3 different targets, 3 different ranges. If I have to stop, dial between each one, as opposed to just holding, I find my hold, boom. I find my hold, boom. I transition, find my hold, boom. So, you know, it's definitely a lot faster. There's no doubt about it. You have to get used to it. You got to do some training on it.
Yeah, and the follow through is a big thing with that. You got to see where that bullet impacts there, and then cut that. That's your new impact point, and then move that.
Yeah, and Jason's bringing up a good point. I mean, the benefits of a Christmas tree reticle, where you can automatically or very quickly identify what you need to change to make a hit, because you see where it impacts. The data is right there. It's like a heads-up display, right? So we can see where that impact was. I see that it was 2 mils to the right. All I need to do is, if I was holding center on that target and it hits 2 mils to the right, exactly where it hits becomes my new crosshair. So all I do is take that, I move that impact point to where I want the impact to actually take place, and now I get a first round hit. Shannon Phillips says, Mike N says, the Mil XT is a Christmas tree that's not too busy. I love the Mil XT. It's a very clean reticle. If you don't want to get into a Horus, I think the Mil XT is one of the best out there, but there's a couple of good ones out there that work really well, that are a little less cluttered. And, you know, there probably is a good argument. If you're doing competition, you want a little bit cleaner of a reticle so that you are more likely to see those impacts. Just depends on what you're doing with that. Shannon says, I thought sometimes the tracking of the reticle can get weird at the furthest ends of its adjustment too, if it's like not the best quality anyways. That's true. So because that glass is starting, they have that glass starting to bend, right, Shannon? So we get some aberration there. We get some distortion going on. It's basically creating some parallax is what's really taking place. Is our relation to what we're seeing and what's going on is not correct. Ray says, Night Force makes some solid optics for the money. I have a few of the tangents, and I will no longer spend that kind of money for the difference, Joshua. So I have a client right now wanting me to get in some tangents, to the tangent thetas, for those of you who don't know. They're probably the most expensive optics on the market. I've never used one. I had the most expensive optic that I have back there. I'm still trying to finish the video on it. I've started, haven't done it, but that is the Zero Compromise. That thing is pretty impressive. It's not a huge jump up from Night Force, but I can tell you, folks, if you're running a Night Force, you got a Ferrari, right? You got to have a hard use. I don't think I've ever seen I've seen guns fall off of gun trucks and hit the deck on a Night Force. And I'm like, oh, we got to go re-zero that thing. And you pull it out and you check zero, that thing's solid as a rock. I've seen them drop, I've seen them roll down, a hillside. I've never seen those things. If I'm taking a gun and an optic to combat, it's going to be a Night Force. So if you want an optic that is going to last, I think Night Force is probably the best out there.
I know we say a lot of times a first focal plane, second focal plane, but maybe some people don't really know what that means. And
sure.
What are most people using nowadays?
I think most people are using first focal plane optics. Right. First focal plane optics used to be a lot more expensive than they are, and now we have budget optics that are really inexpensive and still provide you the nice option of it being a first focal plane reticle. This is probably not the best forum there's lots of videos out there on second versus focal plane, but basically just a real quick description is with a first focal plane reticle, that reticle is always, regardless of what magnification you have it at, the subtensions are always correct. So as I zoom in to 25 power or whatever it happens to be, you're going to see that as the image gets larger, so does the reticle. So it's always correct. So if I had a target in my optic and I milled it and it was 1 mil wide, and then I zoomed in further, that image would get larger, but it would stay within that 1 mil. It would still be the exact same thing. So the reticle actually grows, and it's on the reticle is on the first focal plane, so that it is actually magnified at the same time as the image itself. The second focal plane reticle is, those subtensions are only correct. You can only use a reticle relation formula, and it's only correct on holds at a specified, usually at the max, but not always. So if you're not at the right magnification, that reticle doesn't change. You can zoom all the way in, you can zoom all the way out. That reticle is going to stay the exact same size. So it is only correct. Your holds are only correct if you're using a relation formula or a relation to that, as in the reticle, at a certain magnification. I know that's probably a terrible explanation.
No, that's good. Actually, I didn't realize. I always thought that full power for the second focal plane was it, but you're saying they make scopes now that don't not on full power.
So there's some scopes out there that'll have like 28x or 25x, and for whatever reason, that it is only correct at 22.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's an easy way to make mistakes, and it's not like your magnification ring has any sort of clicks or anything like that on it. Ray says I've had a total of 1 night force that went down from a sample of about 15 attackers. It's technically didn't go down. The illumination would not turn off. That's it. And folks, if you look at, I would love, and Ray probably has more pull over at night force than me, but I would love to see I would love to get a night force engineer. Yes, Shannon, the answer is yes. Always go first focal plane, in my opinion. There's some people out there that make some good arguments for second focal plane. They're not very compelling to me, but if you can definitely get it cheaper.
I mean, you can't beat it. A mill is a mill is a mill, no matter what power you're on.
What magnification you're on, it just only makes sense. Or an MOA, if you want, if you're still in the MOA mafia, God rest your souls. It's still MOA no matter what. So anyways, I would love to get a night force engineer on there, but there's a bunch of videos of actually in the night force factory where they're showing them beating those scopes up. They're testing them. They check for tracking accuracy before they ship those things out. They're under some pretty tight quality control. And of course, one thing that definitely helps is the fact that they have, I know in SOCOM, we were using all night force. We probably could have used some fund money and got other optics, but we typically were given night force. So they have some contracts with SOCOM, and again, that allows them to do a lot more R&D and make sure that their quality control is a little bit tighter than some of the other ones. The MOA Mafia lives. I'm gonna make you guys some MOA Mafia patches. Look, at the end of the day, folks, we're all shooters, man. It's a fun argument to have, right? And we're all friends here. Let's have the argument. It's fine. But man, some of you guys are getting so goddamn emotional about me shitting on your MOA. Like, I mean, they just get out there and just blast away and then just say nonsense. It's kind of comical to me. Really is. Buddy D, I'm going to try to shoot 1 mile Sunday. My personal best is 1,223 yards. Hope that changes. Awesome, buddy. The only time I've had the distance to shoot a mile, and I was shooting it with 308, and I think it took me 3 rounds to hit, was at rifles only. We shot this was in 2004. But I shot a reduced sized silhouette at 1 mile. It was a 16, I think it was like 1620 meters, a little over, I think it was right around 1,800 yards.
We went to Surefire range one time.
You didn't do shit. Just lie. Quit. Don't add a story and lie, Jay. Go ahead.
But they were really cool. Actually, if you shot the 1 mile, they'd engrave your brass, the 1 mile club.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
It's pretty nice.
Second focal plane has this place, especially for closer hunting. Yep. The simple reason is that your reticle doesn't get so small that you can't see it. However, for long range, first focal plane all the way. And those are the folks that I hear making that argument are hunters. And again, they're not shooting over 300 yards. If you're not shooting over 300 or 400 yards, then
doesn't matter. Get a red dot.
It really doesn't matter. Shannon says I have MOA as well. I wish I didn't now, LOL, but I don't have change on hand. And again, man, you guys, that's just one component of long range shooting. So what I don't want people to do is watch this video or watch all the other ones and, suddenly feel like their gear is inadequate. It's not. MOA, without a doubt, works. You can get lots of training value out of it, but, to say that MOA and MIL are the exact same, it's just the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit is nonsense. And we all know Fahrenheit's better anyhow, so screw you, freaking. But going back to that, folks, as far as the metric system, once you get established and you understand how to use your mill optic and things like that, it does help to learn the metric system, because here's what's nice about mill versus MOA. We know that one MOA is 1.047 inches at 100 yards, right? And then it's 10.47 inches at 1,000. Folks, what's nice about mill is that 100 meters, it is 10 centimeters. At 1,000 meters, it is 1 meter wide. That's what it is. So imagine 1,000 meters. 1,000 meters. All right, we have 1 meter, 3 feet. And to say that if we can't subdivide that into 30 inches or 10, right? 3.6 inches. That's not fine enough for you to shoot, because that's what we're talking about. 3.6 inches at 1,000 meters, which happens to be further. It's about 334 inches at 1,000 yards. 3.47, I believe, or 3.447, something like that. 3.44. So 3.44 inches at 1,000 yards. I don't know anybody that's shooting that, and you're saying, oh, that's not precise enough. Whereas 36 inches is 1,000 meters, or again, 1 meter, around 36 inches at 1,000 meters. So, to pretend that that's not precise enough for you is just, again, sit back and be silly. Was that Gary's argument for MOA there? I'm used to one of Gary's guns, so I'm using it on one of Gary's guns. Will probably be mill, so I'll get the cup with mill.
Yeah, we only sell mill guns here.
That's right. We only sell mill guns.
Yeah.
Hey, no, we don't. We sell MOA scopes all the time, folks. If you want an MOA scope, we'll sell you one. And again, between us friends, I'm not going to crap on your MOA scope. I will behind your back, but not in front of you. No, it's all good. What else we got? What other questions we got? All things long range. We got me and you got Ray here. I mean, I think between the two of us, we can pretty much give you any answers you need. And folks, if you haven't checked out Ray's YouTube channel, you should. He is a content producing machine and a long range shooting machine. What else we got? Folks, again, we're giving them away. Hold on, I'm going to take this off real quick. I'm going to take this new GAT I got off. And was that's... And Ray, I'm probably going to send you one of these to check out. But we have the Fat Boy Levitate tripod. Folks, I'm telling you right now, this is probably one of the most impressive tripods and ball heads I've used. I think it is, again, I don't like to mention a lot of companies in my videos because there's some really good companies out there owned by some really hardworking Americans. I'm not trying to crap on them or anything else, but from my experience, I love Two Vets tripods. I love that company. Really Right Stuff is really good. But I'm just telling you, folks, this tripod is better in almost every way possible. This Levitate is very similar to the Really Right Stuff leveling head. There's a lot, I think there's some additional advantages of this locking piece down here. And of course, with all of these, you get what we call the side chick, because again, every fat boy needs a side chick, but this allows you to actually put your phone or your Kestrel or whatever you got going on up there, so you can videotape what's going on. You have your data right there, whatever works for you. So great tripod. I love, my favorite by far is the Elevate, which is this one. Again, what's cool about this tripod, unlike some of the other ones, I can loosen those up, and it being, look at that, just lifting up or pushing down, I'm automatically adjusting that as opposed to having to reach all the way down. So we have inverted legs there. And I'm sure you guys have seen my video, but the fit and finish on these, folks, is unbelievable. I love the way that the legs lock. And we're actually going to have Connor and Casey on the podcast pretty soon. Especially when we give one of those away, but we'll probably have them on even sooner than that. Shannon says, I know this is off topic a little bit. I'm going to be shooting 2,000 meters in a course end of this month. What would be ideal caliber for shooting that? 416 Barrett, something big to spot misses. I think, yeah, I mean, 416 Barrett will do it. 300 PRC will do it. Really, it doesn't matter what caliber you have as far as spotting misses. What you need is a really good spotting scope. 338 Norma, 300 Norma, all those are great. Even 300 Norma is super expensive. You're talking $6 or $7 a round at least. 300 PRC will get out there. You're getting to the end of what it's capable. I have to look to see what you're looking at as far as it going subsonic, but it's getting close. If not, it's probably going subsonic around 1,800, maybe a little bit sooner than that. But it'll do it, and it'll do it a little bit cheaper than some of those other ones. 416 is extremely expensive. You can also get into some of the shy tacs. If you're looking at a 2,000 meter gun, that's you're going to spend some money either way. What else? Spotting scope recommendations. Well, spotting scopes are kind of more standard optics. We got the Swarovski BTR 80, I think it is.
Man, I'll never forget the first time you broke them out. Now, folks, I am not a long range guru. I've been to multiple sniper courses, right? And I've used a lot of spotting scopes in my life. And first time Gary broke it out, I was like, I looked through it. I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty nice. It's not bad, right? Then I went and I looked over at another spotting scope. This was like a little while later. And I was like, yeah, blah, blah.
Like one of the Leupold gold
like
rings.
Leupold,
the ones that we're normally used to.
Yeah, used to, right? So look through the Leupold, right? And then I transitioned from that Leupold to the Swarovski like immediately, and I was like, holy! It was like going from like 420 to 4K. It was like it blew my mind how clear that glass was.
Yeah, those things. And those are, obviously super expensive. I don't remember what we spent on them. I think it was like $400 or $500, right? Summer?
Yeah.
Summer sitting right over there working. I think it was like $400 or $500.
I think she's still crying about that.
We need some more. Jeff, there is some pretty good ones out there that are, obviously when we're running a long range school, we need to be able to see those impacts. For the average Joe, I definitely wouldn't spend some money. I have to do some research for you, Jeff, and I will. We'll take that on. Speaking of which, folks, well, I won't make that announcement. We'll talk about it. I'll talk about it between now and then. We have a plan to have a really cool guest on next week, and you'll have that. We'll definitely have Ray on here again pretty soon, too. What else? The Swirl is definitely amazing. There's no doubt about it. They're super expensive. You're talking $3,000 to $4,000 depending on which one you get. But there are some good ones out there that you can buy $1,500 to $2,000. I forgot which. Brooke was just on here earlier. They got a couple of small ones that they I think they got from work that are really inexpensive, and the image through that is very impressive. Very impressive. It's it's smaller, it's more compact, probably a little bit more easier to handle for the average person. And of course, if you're going hunting and something like that, you're going to need something a little bit more compact if you're going to bring it with you hunting. So those are very situation dependent. Maybe that's another video that we can do some comparison. Vortex Viper HD. The thing that you want, folks, regardless of what you get, do some research on those, check out some reviews, but you definitely want to have a MIL or MOA reticle in there so that you can actually, you're not winging it, and you actually can see where those impacts, and you can give a good correction, either for yourself or others.
Should your spotter have the same type of? Absolutely.
You want your spotter to have as close to the exact same reticle, and definitely the same. If you're shooting MIL, your spotter definitely needs MIL. It is not fun to be running our MIL spotting scopes and have MOA shooters. I'm pretty good at doing conversions in my head for the most part, but still, you definitely need to have everyone speaking the same language. Rangefinders is another thing I've been looking at. Jeff. Right now, I'm kind of taking a look at my next rangefinders. I think will definitely be the binocular type. SIG, the Kilo 6K, I think is pretty good. I'm looking at those. There's a couple other ones out there. Swirl makes a set. But as far as a handheld rangefinder, there's lots of good ones out there that are gonna work. Out to. I'll tell you, I have a Bushnell Elite 1 mile, I think it's called, and I also have a SIG Kilo something else. One of their older, just standard handhelds. It was supposed to be able to range non-reflected targets out to $3,000, I think. And that old Bushnell Elite 1 mile will hit targets where that one won't. So I've been a little disappointed in that particular one, but read some reviews out there, and that's something I definitely need to do some more research, because we need to upgrade our rangefinders as well, don't we, babe? Yeah. SIG Kilo 5. I think mine is the SIG Kilo 3 or something. It came out a few years ago. Anyways, I've been a little disappointed. I paid a lot more for that one than I did the Bushnell Elite 1 mile, and the Bushnell Elite 1 mile has always done better for me on that. SIG BDX 3000. That's not the one I have, but I don't know if that's a recommendation by Ray, but I think it is. He's saying that's around 800, so you can check that out.
It's free.
What?
Is learning how to mill your range.
Yeah, but it's impractical. That's impractical. When you're out there, you're not going to sit there and mill everything, and you still have. There's lots of room for error when you're milling, and you got to do it a lot to get really good at it, folks.
That is 100% true.
Like
that, you do have to do.
When I first put together our curriculum for long range, one of my intentions was to teach mill relation, teach how to range estimate with a reticle, whether it's MOA or mill.
And we touched on that for a little bit in the beginning.
Yeah, it just takes up too much time, and they're not walking away with a practical skill set, right?
Right.
It's actually easy to learn, and so if you guys want to learn that thing, but you got to get out there and you got to practice a bunch, and you got to know the size of your target, and that's where some things get a little crazy too. So if you're just milling random objects out there, even people. So we always used to use a constant of 10/16. So a person from his waist to the top of his head was about 40 inches. But again, there's variance in that. And then you just 10/16 divided by however many mils you see gives you your range in meters. So again, I think milling and for range estimation again, they're not even doing that overseas anymore. Military snipers don't mill shit. They do it in sniper school. Beyond that, you're range finding everything. What else we got? Any other questions, gripes, or complaints about Jason or Summer?
You got an announcement.
Oh, you got an announcement? Come over here, babe. I got a mic for you. Here we go. Look at all this beauty jumping in here.
Big announcement. We finally have our FFL for the new store location, so we can officially sell firearms there. And I did my first firearm sale today.
Good job, babe.
I know.
So I just want you guys to know, this is one thing I always point out. Summer was just using her telephone voice. It's a special octave that she hits for
that Gary never gets.
I do not get that voice. I want that sweet telephone. Oh, hey guys, everybody. Gary, I hate you. What else we got? What else happened with you, Jay?
Well, I just cut my mic off.
Oh.
I feel like I can hear myself on your mic, so I keep cutting my mic off. Am I coming in?
You can't. I'm sure you can. I got this lav mic on here that's not as quite as doesn't.
I keep shutting my mic off. I think I'm echoing, so I'll try to talk lower.
Yeah. But, so what I will say, were you gonna add something there, Jay?
No, not at all.
You're just gonna complain about the mics?
Exactly.
You turn your mic back on to complain about the mic.
I lost train of thought there.
Folks, we're going to get more into this. I definitely am going to put more content out there of the basics. I need to redo our online optics course that I've done twice in the past. There's a whole bunch of things I want to change about that and update. Yeah, so we got a lot more content coming with that. I don't know if you guys saw the short that I just put out today. Eric Cortina sent me one of his tuners. I just put together a new student rifle that's standing right over there. I don't want to grab that, or YouTube will definitely demonetize us, if not shut us off or give us a strike. But we got a new student rifle. I probably will end up putting a Thunder Beast muzzle device on there so that we can run a suppressor on it. But before I do that, we're going to do a bunch of content testing out that Eric Cortina tuner, or tuning in general, right? That is not a concept that I believed in a couple years ago. My mind has changed. I'm still not sure how much it matters, how much it changes a lot, but we're going to do some testing on that. And I want to find out for myself how well that works. And I also want to see, I don't get a chance to reload much. We're just too busy. So I'm buying off the shelf ammunition, and I want to see what we can get out of that if we can really tighten some shot groups by changing the barrel harmonics using, just box ammunition. I think you'll probably definitely get the biggest bang for your buck if you're reloading that. But that'll be some fun content. Also, that rifle over there happens to be a Matrix chassis. We're going to go over that chassis. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons. I'll tell you right now, a little spoiler alert, I still like the ESR chassis better. And the main reason, we don't have a folding stock, but what I do like about that Matrix chassis is all the customization that you can do with that. You can customize the grip module that you have on there. You can customize the thumb rest. I do like the much wider, flatter forend. I think there's a lot of benefits there. But at the end of the day, man, you just can't get a folding stock on there. So you got to crank down. You got to change that cheek rest up, and every time that you go to clean that thing. So it's kind of a pain in the ass. What else we got? Yeah, no, the bottom one there. You guys got to come up with some better screen names here. I'm going to feel real bad if that's your real name. I hope it's not, because your mom should have bought a vowel. Put it in that sucker. But I don't doubt that they work. One of my big questions is, what I've seen, one of the biggest things that's going to determine how well it works is your muzzle velocity. So if you start switching ammo and things like that, my question is, how realistic is it to switch things up? How easy is it? How practical is it to be able to adjust those to be shooting the tightest groups that you possibly can? So that's a little bit, those are some of the things that I want to explore a little bit. Shannon says, would you change or improve anything on mill? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, so for those, the only thing that I would say with that is I would like to get rid of MOA altogether. I think it's a really bad system. That's how strongly I feel about it. I think we should just go to mill everything. And if you want finer subtensions or finer corrections, there's a few companies out there that do make 0.05, 5/100ths of mill corrections. So you can even cut that 1/10 of mil in half, and now you're at what, 0.18 MOA? More than fine enough for anybody out there, including bench rush shooters. In my mind, I always have this skit going on, like the first scope company. They're like, all right, we got to make this as complicated as possible. What is we got to come up with a system. Give me some complicated systems. Well, there is the minute of angle. It's like, all right, minute of angle. What is that? That's 1/60th of a degree. All right. Should we divide that by 10? No. We're going to take that. We're going to divide that by 4. Oh, you're going to divide that. Oh, that's weird. You're going to divide that by 4? Yeah, we're going to go with that. And I was like, oh, hey, you know what? This is a terrible system, but the military's buying it. Okay, here's what I want you to do. We're going to put mil in the reticle, and we're going to put MOA on the turrets. That's what we're going to do. It's going to be great. We're going to love it. I just think it's a terrible system. Take 1 degree, divide it by 60, take that, we're going to divide that by 4. Nothing easy math-wise about it. The subtensions are super fine, and it's like, okay, well, we're gonna divide that by 4. That'd be quarter minute of angle. And they're like, well, why are we doing that? Like, you can't, most guns don't shoot, quarter minute of angle. They can't move and impact that fine. Yeah, but they'll think they can, and that's where people are. They think that because it's on their gun that they can move that impact reliably at distance, and you can't, folks. So there's that. Ray, what are your thoughts to take on HQ and structured barrels? Jeff, I think you asked that with we got to get you an answer on that. I haven't even seen these structured barrels. We'll have to look at those.
That was his question a couple weeks ago, right?
It was.
Yeah.
He was talking to Eric about that.
Yeah.
Yep. I still haven't even seen those things. I don't think Eric knew what they were either.
No. Yeah.
Jeff, send me some information on that. If you did already, I'll go back through it. I was on vacation. I brain dumped everything before that. I got basically AD and BC. Before vacation, after vacation. All 4 days of it. What other questions, folks? Anything? Folks, hey, look, we always appreciate you tuning in. We were kind of all over the place, but I wanted to get a chance to get out in front. We didn't really have the MOA Mafia out here like I was hoping we would. They want to watch this afterwards, so they can leave their snide-ass comments down there below and not talk to me in person. But anyways, all joking aside, folks, we really appreciate you. We appreciate you watching, tuning in. We got a whole bunch more content coming up. So make sure you go to ParamountTactical.com. Go check out our upcoming training schedule. Folks, come train with us. We'd love to have you out. We'd love to meet you in person. We got long-range courses coming up. I think we got a couple slots in our long-range level 2 still available. If you've already been to our long-range level 1, make sure you come check that out, long-range level 2. You'll learn a lot. It'll put more things. It'll provide you some clarity and just give you some additional skill sets and additional knowledge with that as well, and some controlled environment to make sure that you're learning what you need to learn. Yes, John, I'm saying go to Mill. Yeah, they did find out Ray was here. What else? Summer, any other announcements?
No.
I feel like I'm missing something.
You missed me.
I did miss you, baby. You were at the shop all day. I was here doing things. I don't got anything else on my notes, folks. We appreciate you. That's all I can tell you. We appreciate all the love and support that you constantly give us. Make sure you go to Paramount Tactical, buy your goods there. Ray, it was great having you on tonight. You should have told me. I'd have had you dial in. Until next time, folks, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you next Wednesday. Be here Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. This is where you're supposed to fade out, Jay. Fade out, Jay.
You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare your